got a good trio of energy going on here. So it's great to meet you guys. Thank you so much for talking about your new album that came out on the 8th of November. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, of course. I just have a quick question for Tommy.
Yes.
Is that Beyond the Black Rainbow? Is that your background?
It is.
Boom. Got it. All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's Panos.
Panos Cosmatos.
Crazy filmmaker. I'm in my like little room in the back of my house, which looks pretty barren.
I'm in my studio.
So nice.
It's always good to have a background in certain situations, so it's good.
It was my pandemic background, so I just pulled it out of the hat.
Nice, good job.
Which is interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the first things that I wanted to delve into. And I'm going to do something. I'm not going to talk about the pandemic when 2025 comes around. I'm done. I've asked about it too much. But I feel like as we close this year out, how much of this pandemic influenced this album or your collaboration and what you're doing now?
Good question. I think I have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess because during the pandemic, the only thing I would say is during the pandemic, where my studio is, it's like a big building with a lot of different like rehearsal spaces and big studios and stuff. And it basically closed down like everywhere else. But we still had access to it and nobody was coming. So the guy who ran the place basically gave me the key. Well, it's a code to get in. He let me come in and use the big room or like the bigger room as we wanted for free, basically, because they rent that by the hour type thing or by the day. And he said, well, nobody's here, man. If you want to go ahead. So Tommy and I were able to play really separated from each other, far from each other. And we just jammed a bunch.
That is true.
That was with Mishka. We did a lot with Mishka at that time. We did with the bass at that time. Who was actually the bass with Patrick Watson, but whatever.
He's still in the band. He's
still playing with Pat, yeah. So yeah, that's sort of where we started really sort of.
It's true. Yeah.
Playing.
I'm so
forgot about that. It's such a haze. Yeah.
And then I guess I made like a bedroom record during the pandemic and asked Simon to send me some stems to play over when we couldn't be in the same room at that point. That was really early on.
Yeah.
2020. But yeah, we collaborated in a few different ways. And then I guess we had a couple of days at our friend Richie Reed Perry's studio in 2021. Yeah,
just as things were sort of opening up a bit.
Like late 2021, and we just kind of booked a couple of days and just did what we were doing in the rehearsal studio, but we tracked it. And that was kind of the beginning of it, because Sarah came in and sang a little bit.
Oh, she did at the beginning of that period.
And that's what you used. Those were like our kind of pre-production demos.
Yeah, that's what we call that.
So yeah, so definitely, I guess some of this, the seeds were kind of planted.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, anything pandemic related influence wise, the only thing that it influenced was it gave us the time to do that, because we're both supposed to be touring like crazy during that period. So we're able to focus on just ourselves and something new, which was kind of a little blessing in disguise during the pandemic,
Yeah.
I haven't stopped touring since I'm 18, basically 18, 19.
Yeah.
Little breaks here and there, but like to have that long of a break was actually, kind of nice to spend time with my family and like be home.
That first year was pretty dreamy.
It was pretty surreal, yeah.
I mean, in both ways. Terrifying, but also relationship got better.
yeah, exactly. I managed to finish Infinite Jest that I've been trying to finish reading for like 10 years, and I finally did it.
Wow, that is a long book, dude.
Well, it was a pandemic, man. We had nowhere else to go.
I know, and that's the time where you do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I had a friend give me that over the pandemic, and I was like, I'm a slow reader. I'm an audiobook guy. I'm like, man, that thing's going to take me till I'm 85 to get done.
Yeah, I'm a slow reader. It took me 3 months in the pandemic, man, because I really thought at the beginning in April, I was like, this is April 2020. I'm like, oh, this will see me through this whole pandemic thing. And
yeah.
Sure enough, by, June, it was done. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're still here.
That's it. Well, it was kind of like the pandemic was kind of like a candle. Like after you're done burning it down, you put another one on and you lose track of what the original candle was. It really just melted together into weird Dali origami.
That's a cool analogy. I like it.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious, what were kind of the ideological underpinnings or the musical backgrounds that you guys had that impelled you two to come together and create?
I'll take that, Tommy.
Sure. Try. Um, yeah, forgive me for whatever I'm about to say, but I think we met, well, I guess Simon and I met through your partner.
Hmm.
Simon
Yeah.
has is part of a phenomenal band called Bus Owls. It's essentially a collaboration between himself and Erica Angell, who's an amazing singer from Sweden, and they're married. And we met on a gig in Montreal, and I think you guys needed a sub
Hmm.
at some point, and called me up, and we just kind of hit it off. It was like the three of us playing a few shows, and I think the more we played, we kind of like we talked a lot about the same music, and we we like nerd out about Ryuichi Sakamoto and Talk Talk. I don't know if you know
Oh
English
yeah,
band,
yeah.
Mark Ribot, and
Yeah,
just
pretty
sort of, I
wide
guess,
range.
I guess a lot of music that was kind of, yeah, kind of like coming from many different places, but we shared a lot of the same influences. And I think we both had like, I definitely come from a jazz background, and Simon studied jazz as well. And I think we've also ended up in more like scenes adjacent to jazz as well.
Mm.
That was kind of our meeting point, was like, you know, love it, like a love for improvisation, but at the same time, like pulling from many influences.
Yeah,
And
and a lot of influences that like so many, I can think of so many records or groups or musicians, anybody that like that you mentioned to me or I mentioned to you, and we both get excited about whether we have
yeah,
already listened to them and heard like, well, there's so many, we all love such wide range of music, and like I find me and Tommy's are that wide range really, that Venn diagram is pretty small. Like there's a lot of it that we like together, a lot of it.
yeah, from like no wave stuff to like
Oh yeah.
Sonny
Come on,
Rollins.
Matheny. Don't forget Matheny, good old Kansas boy. Come
Matheny.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lyle Mays. I mean, I love, yeah, I love, you know, I grew up listening to a lot of smooth jazz because that's what my dad listened to, or like studio jazz, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think
Studio
we
jazz.
definitely both have a love for like for making records as well. Like, and that was something that came up in conversation as well. Like,
Absolutely,
just,
yeah.
there's so much talent in the jazz world, but then I do feel like sometimes I was like craving to hear more people like getting their hands dirty more in the studio,
Mhm.
Yeah.
especially in the younger generation. Of course, it happens, but yeah, that was sort of like a starting point as well.
Yeah, it was a meeting point for us too. Okay, I just want to add one little thing that when I first met Tommy, when my wife asked, that we needed a sub, we're a trio normally, like my wife and I, and with a drummer. And when we needed a sub drummer, she's so picky about drummers. I mean, I am too, but she's very picky. And when she said she did this one pickup gig and said, "Oh, we should hire this guy," I immediately was like, "Okay, he must be great if you trust him already."
Uh,
So that was, yeah, that was
yeah, it was nice to meet yeah, Simon and Erica. That was, yeah, I think that was probably like the first gig I played in
yeah.
Montreal. We
Oh
were
yeah.
still, my partner and I were still splitting time between New York and Montreal at that point.
Hmm.
And then Simon and I also have crossover as well, like New York. One of my friends from college, Alan Hampton. I don't know if you know, great bass player, plays with like
I was with Rufus
Andrew
Wainwright and
Robert
Andrew
Glasper,
Bird.
Andrew Bird, and also finds himself in a
Yeah.
lot of different scenes. He had worked with Simon and Erica's band, and
Mhm.
I think Simon had texted him like, "Do you know Tommy?" And he
Yeah,
was like,
I need to vet him
like that.
for my buddy Alan in
Oh,
LA.
buddies
And
are
he had
so,
only good things to say. So
yeah. Another like one of my closest friends from school is a Kansas City musician as well, Logan Richardson.
Oh yeah, Logan's great, man.
He's
Yeah.
like a brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met in high school, and
Wow, that's cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember interviewing him years ago when he was in Paris, and he talked about the first Kansas City Jazz Academy, which was
yeah,
on the grounds of where the American Jazz Museum is before they built it. So yeah, his historical background's huge. It's funny you were mentioned drumming. Of all the musicians that I've talked to about Miles Davis, I remember one time someone told me when he would make a band, he would start with the drummer and he would build the band around it. I had no idea that that was the central part. The rhythm section was the fulcrum of what he was doing as a musician.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but when I listen to Tony Williams, I'm like, that's
Yeah,
obvious.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally is.
Matheny says that too. He's like the real leader of the band is the drummer.
Yeah,
I get it. I
Uh,
agree.
you
Definitely.
have so much. I mean, yeah, you have the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's
When
a
the
lot of
pan,
responsibility there. You
yeah,
can screw everybody up too.
Yes, you can.
yeah,
You can ruin a band pretty easily.
Well, you can definitely bring like dynamic. You can shift the dynamic how you want. You're the
Yeah.
one driving that bus, as a
yeah,
But
drummer.
that's so fun. That's an interesting topic too, because guitar is a fun collaboration with the drummer because you can just, the drummer's just playing too fucking loud. You can just
So can I.
crank it. Um, and it's nice. And you hear like Tony's early bands too, like, Emergency and that stuff. It's like Sean McLaughlin
Mm.
he's, I imagine he was playing pretty loud at the
yeah, yeah,
time.
Sure.
yeah.
So you can kind of like meet one another.
Yeah,
Uh,
I when the
benefit.
pan so let me ask you this. The one thing I noticed about the pandemic, and I've noticed lately with jazz too, is there's a lot of levels of experimentation. There's a lot of levels of electronica that are getting infused with kind of the classic sound.
Mhm.
What is kind of your philosophy? What was your philosophy of sound? You obviously had these ideologies that hooked up, but when you actually really got on your instrument, and went for it, what were you going for?
You want to
That's a good
start,
question.
Simon? You can take it.
Yeah. I guess in the context of this record, because I feel like
Yeah,
every project is different.
yeah,
So in context of this record and this
yeah,
collaboration with Tommy for this specific record, it was a specific sort of idea of taking the improvised material and using all the bells and whistles and like chopping it up and doing what we could in studio with it to like, for lack of a better term, post produce in a way that like you would hear in maybe like a hip hop record or in a. And I'm not to say, no, I'm not trying to sound. It doesn't sound like hip hop at all what we do, but I just meant more the minding
yeah,
of. Yeah, I guess I just want to make clear that it's not just taking jazz and hip hop fusing it together like people like Robert Glasper and stuff do amazingly. That's not at all what we're doing, but it's just more the minding of taking a bunch of improvised material, like a big, like I had said once, like a big clump, like a big rock, sort of like sculpting rather than painting, whereas you have like this giant clump of thing that you don't know what it is, and by chipping away at it, that's where the artwork comes out. It's sort of like reverse thinking. So we did all this improvisation. We did, hours of like going into the studio. The point was to, you know, do as many hours of improvising as we could without editing ourselves in the studio while we're recording. Just go. We never listened back really in the studio. We just went.
Yeah, we didn't listen to anything.
We didn't listen to anything until way later. And then the this was all the idea from the beginning, was then after that was to sift through. That was sort of the biggest process, 40 plus hours of improvising. And in 40 hours of improvising over 6 days, there's gonna be some shit in there. It's not all gonna be gold, obviously.
yeah,
Most of it was.
Yeah, well, that's why we got 40 minutes. Good.
Yeah.
you know. And then from then, so once we listened to it all together and cut down what we basically like I said before, if we didn't say like fuck yeah, then it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then forget it. We have too much to go through to
yeah,
like dwell on like, oh, maybe.
yeah.
So we kind of like went through there, and then from there, that's when we went to the studio with Pietro Amato, who's a good friend of mine, engineer, who also recorded most of it. We did one extra day at I guess it's People Teeth, right? That's the Nick studio
Yeah. Upstate
in
New York.
Kingston, New York. So we did one day there and then 5 days here recording. Anyway, all to say that in the mix was a big part of, chopping it up and not being afraid to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like take it all apart, what we've done. Throw it in a crazy reverb, or like cut something out completely, reverse something. I mean, at one point, Tommy, you had this crazy idea that worked so well that you were like, oh, let's pitch the kick drum up 2 octaves for like 12 bars or 16 bars or something.
Yeah.
which sounds ridiculous, when but then you did it, and it was like, oh shit, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of, yeah, that was a part of the process. Yeah, when we were mixing. Um, Also, our yeah, Pietro, who was engineering the days as well. We had him mark things sections
mhm,
went through. He was sort of like our
guiding light.
guy, like third set of ears, and
Mm,
that really took a lot of pressure, I think, off of the two of us. We didn't have
yeah,
to like sit. Was that cool?
yeah, yeah.
That sound or he's a really great musician as well, and French horn player and keyboard player, and just we kind of trusted in him to mark what was kind of when we get into like a nice zone and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And so that really helped at the beginning when we
Definitely.
started sifting through stuff. We were already just like kind of zooming in on what he had marked,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
really helpful. But then I think we also, Simon and I both kind of had our stations in the studio. Like I had to have like a synthesizer setup and a sampler and running through effects. And Simon has his whole like crazy effects rig, which looks like a spaceship. And I think the goal was to get a lot of the sounds like in the moment as well. Like we
Hmm.
like try to capture that as close as we could. But then in mixing, like we when you're going through all the stuff, maybe we hear a moment and we're like, oh, we want to bring that out. Let's bring up the kick drum two
Yeah,
octaves or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Just kind of like similar to painting, I guess, in that way. Like just highlighting certain things that we heard in the improvisations and
Yeah. It was like we
bringing it out.
sculpted and then we painted the sculpture after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Sounds
Well, also, I just have to
pretentious to talk about.
no, but I have to add that I don't feel like we've lost the organic in it either, though. At the same time, I think that was pretty important to. It's still us playing, It's
Yeah, and self mixing when we're recording too, because
yes, yeah,
we're mixing our like I have a mixer. You're Simon's like playing a lot of generative. He'll loop things, and he's like on the ground turning knobs, and like there were a lot of moments, even listening back, where like you hear things peak, and we're like
yeah.
we
Yep.
had to adjust in the mix and stuff, but like yeah, it's kind of going all over this. But yeah, I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I want to step back a little bit in your lives, and I want to paint a picture for you, um, to kind of lead into this. I remember in 2000 when Kid A came out, and I remember we went to a dive bar in Kansas City and I was with a work friend and we got blazing drunk, and I got the album and I held on to it. And I said, when we're ready, let's go out to the car. It was wintertime and I popped it in. And I remember that first bar came out. And I was like, wait, 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 wait. This is
Yeah.
Radiohead? So I want to know in your lives, what was that album for you that changed everything? Where you were just like, wait, 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 wait. With
Oh,
jazz or otherwise?
I'll just jump in quickly because I
go
just
for it, please. Yeah.
it was Laughing Stock by
I
Tom
I was
Stock
gonna say Laughing Stock is yours. I could have guessed that.
in 2005, I think, when I was finishing my degree at the new school, and my teacher at the time gave me his hard drive of albums, and I
Yeah.
guess that's what he did back then. He's like, "Oh, here you go. Yeah, take what you want." And I remember listening in my parents' kitchen and just like on repeat. And it's funny you mentioned Radiohead because I thought it was Radiohead.
Yeah.
It was, and I think it was like a tune, and like the groove was in 7/4 or something. I was like, I've never heard this Radiohead tune. I'm a big Radiohead fan, and I'm like, Talk, who are these guys? And then I just became obsessed with that record and the whole world around it. And yeah, have since like read nerdy books written by the engineer, and yeah, that kind of got me into a whole world. But that was 100%, that was the one for
The
me.
rabbit hole. That was the gateway
Yeah,
drug.
that's the
Yeah.
one.
I find it really. As you're saying this, I'm trying to think of what I mean. I can think of four offhand in different moments in my life,
Yeah.
because we all go through these things in our life. If I had to pick one, I mean, it would be pretty. It's kind of very typical to say, but fuck it, it is what it is. Love Supreme is like
Yeah.
You know, just blew my fucking mind. First time I heard it. For all, I mean, I don't even have to explain it. It's just, if you know, you know.
Well, the story behind it, it's amazing. And there was a movie on Netflix, and they talked about the absolute convergence of his humanity and spirituality that just converged at that point in his life and made that album. Like,
Hmm.
because the whole thing is supposed to be a prayer. And it's amazing, and it still blows everybody away to this
It's
day.
a blizzard.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I
it's
listened to it
it's
yesterday.
yeah.
Holy
You know?
scrolls.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Joe, what was it? I mean, what was your reaction to Kid A when you?
Oh man, I loved it. I wanted more. It was such a departure from their rock bones, but this
Hmm.
new vein of what they were doing, you could just feel York and Greenwood and all those guys coming together and like you guys have said, finding this organic, fresh, just improv way. And that's the thing about Radiohead that gets me because I've had them on my show and it's a jazz show. There's levels of them that genuinely operate in a jazz operative.
Hmm.
There's
I can
this
see that.
freedom. There's no fences around what they do, which I find refreshing. And and even with Miles Davis, people got upset with all of that electronica and all of the things that he was doing later on, but he was genuinely going with the flow too. He didn't want to get pigeonholed into one genre or sound.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
and that's I think what Radiohead was doing there.
I think if you upset people, you're on the right track.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Pretty much, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, get people,
Getting
thinking
riled up. Like people that,
or like confusion or I don't know.
yeah, not knowing what to make of
Terrible
it.
word.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a saxophonist here in town, the great Adam Larson, and he
Yeah.
told me at one point when he released an album, he was like, "I all I want is I want an emotion from people, whether they like it or they don't like it, but if they
Hmm.
don't have any emotion at all, that's a problem."
Totally. I've been saying that. Well, I've been saying I'm not saying I didn't invent that, but like I said, I've been. It's exactly my ethos.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty grim. So, what are you guys doing to promote the album? Live shows? What do you guys, or what's the next project? What's going on?
I'm not really sure. We're kind of like, I mean, we've been, just since it just came out, we haven't we've both been quite busy, so we haven't hit the ground as far as trying to find doing shows because we're doing everything ourselves. It's all 100% self-produced as far as booking and making the record. We self-produce the record, and yeah, we're doing this 100%. Me and Tommy. That said, hopefully in the spring, that's the plan, right? We should get together soon before Christmas, and
Yes, it's good. We'll talk.
yeah, we're
Um, yeah, spring is insane because of our Simon and I also do. I mean, we work in a lot of we make a living playing with other musicians as side musicians, and that's just the reality of it. This is such a passion project, and
mhm.
um, it's like, um, what am I trying to say? Yeah, it's like we work on it as much as we can, and then we're also like balancing
Yeah, exactly.
many other
But
things.
that said, we'll find some time in the spring.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well,
It'd be great to come down to the States. It's easy for Tommy, but not for me
Yeah.
because I think
yeah,
these have like tripled and shit. So
we could borrow gear, I guess.
we could borrow gear, and we
I love
probably don't
Kansas.
add this part in the interview just in case. But like,
Yeah.
Kansas City's near and dear to my heart. I mean, I
hey, you've
would,
talked about it before. I've never been.
I would, I mean, every summer Logan and I would come back and we'd play at the Blue Room when
Yeah.
we were in college, and um,
Let's go play there.
Yes.
that
Please
might
do.
not be. It's
Please
great.
do.
I don't know if is he still running?
Gerald Dunn.
Gerald, is he still? I love Gerald.
Yeah.
Say hi if
Yeah, yeah, totally. And he just opened a new barbecue place here in Grandview
okay.
by where I work, my day job. And it's great, man. He's got this melding of like Kansas City and Texas barbecue. It's insane.
You
It's
work with
wonderful.
Gerald.
What's that?
You work with Gerald.
Well, I do. Yeah, yeah. We toss
Okay.
things back and forth. But he's so
Okay.
busy. It's hard to like pin things down. But
He's
yeah, he'll. Yeah,
yeah, I've
he's a
known him
busy.
for a
I
long.
don't
He's a
know how
great
he's
guy.
squeezing a barbecue joint into his life, but he's got that figured out. So it's wild. But
Yeah, it's a great scene down there.
yeah, and we got the Green Lady Lounge, and they got a companion club. Are you familiar with the Green Lady?
I've heard about it.
That would
Yeah, I've
be a
never played there.
Yeah, that would be a great place for you guys. There's a companion club
Should
next
do
door
it.
called the Black Dolphin, and it's like a
Yeah.
swanky. It looks like you're walking into the old set of the dating game, but it's like electrified. And then
Oh,
the
nice.
green lady's like a
Yeah.
vampire lair. You're like, all right, I'll just take a pint of blood, and you're gonna go out and do your vampire thing. But yeah, it's so there's options definitely. So,
So cool.
but
Yeah, it's good
yeah,
scene. It was always like a big, I don't want I don't want to dive in St. Louis, but it was always like Kansas City was always a bit like hipper and bit more hip than St. Louis, which was amazing, amazing scene to grow up in, but
How
like
far are they from each
maybe
other? Pretty close, no?
like 3.5, 4 hours
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
are,
Still enough distance that you can,
yeah,
you
you
know,
could do both.
it's
yeah.
not like the
Just
Twin Cities
different.
there. It's not like
Not the Twin Cities. No. Kansas City is kind of like Twin Cities, I guess, in a way with Kansas City, Kansas.
True. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
But
oh yeah, because you're in both states, right?
Yeah.
In Missouri,
It's
in
it's confusing. Yeah. So
it
people
is
from out of town are always like, "How's Kansas?" Like my relatives from New York are always like, "Joey, how's Kansas?" It's like, "It's fine." I just got to a point where I don't correct it anymore. I'm just like,
yeah,
"It's great.
yeah.
Everything's good." Dorothy
because
flew
you're in.
away.
So I'm gonna be that guy. You're in Missouri, right? You're not in
Right. Yeah,
Kansas.
Kansas
You're in
City,
Kansas
Missouri.
City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
And
it.
then
you're
when
in
you
Lee.
throw
Did I say
what's
okay.
that?
Oh, I was gonna say you're in Lee Summit, right?
Yeah, I'm literally, that's what I was going to say early on. I moved to Lee Summit in January of 2020, the hometown of Pat Metheny. So whenever
I'm
I
a
would
teeny.
bring that up,
Oh,
I
we
got
know.
a
Oh
bevy of
yeah.
stories I mean, there's so many Pat Metheny stories out there. You could
I'm
fill
sure.
thousands of coffee table books.
We're a huge fan.
Oh
Yeah,
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 definitely.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you should pick up this read. There's a local author. Oh man, it's escaping me, but you can Google it. And she documented all the early days before he left town. So when we moved
Mm.
here, my stepdaughter was going to the high school he went to, and all these like it's like Pat Metheny, this is where it all began, and where all of because Lee Summit's grown quite a bit, but there's all these stories and vignettes of him playing with all the old cats from the old days, like Jay McShann and Dave Scott, who's in New York now. It's like people don't know how he even went to high school. He played so much. He was everywhere,
Yeah.
all over the place. So it's a fascinating read if you want to pick it up. Carolyn Glenn Brewer is her name, and it's
All right. Okay.
really it's a great
Yeah.
book, man. It shows how all of these seeds were planted from the old school cats at KC that flourished into this world that he's become now. So,
Nice.
That's amazing. And his brother Mike is still there, right?
yeah, Mike is he's still in Lee Summit. I had a college class with him before I got into jazz. So this guy, I'm sitting next to him in a journalism class and we're talking and I'm like, "Hey, my name's Joe." And he's like, "My name's Mike Matheny." He just kind of stops and he looks at me. And I'm like, "Cool, man." And I didn't really realize the lore of Pat. And he was like, "Yeah, Matheny, my brother
Yeah.
Pat, he's kind of popular." But we were good friends. I mean, he was a cool cat, very grounded, flugelhorn player, trumpeter. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Beneath Missouri Skies. That's what it's called.
Yes,
Find it.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful record. Yeah, and it always sounds like when you do that drive to like on Highway 70, it always kind of sounds like yeah.
Totally.
Music just look like the barren kind of landscape. Kind
They
of.
captured it. They
Well,
audio.
no matter what, your
Yes.
environment's always going to influence you. What's around you,
Yeah,
always
totally.
you can hear it. And
Big time.
like I lived in Sweden for 5 years, and all the music. My wife is Swedish, and like all the musicians I met there, you understand why ECM is what it is, and why that sound, that stark Scandinavian sound, is what it is.
Yeah.
When you're there, it's like it's
Totally. Yeah,
very
visual.
obvious.
That's
Beautiful
cool.
stuff.
So, gentlemen, before we have Zoom close the magic digital door on us, I want to thank you for being open, for taking a minute out. I love the album. I'm looking forward to having it on the show. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
taking time out.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate you having us here, man.
Yeah.
Nice chat.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
absolutely.
support. Yeah, we appreciate it.